Welcome to tonight's Leadership Special Edition of Talking Heads. Reed Hastings is our topic. Join us to understand the leadership, culture, and ethics that inspired this red envelope sensation.
Have you ever rented a movie and been penalized with a late fee after bringing it back late? Reed Hastings has. The revolution of the famous red envelopes all started when he lost a movie and was being charged $40 after 6 weeks. In fear of telling his wife, he started thinking about the movie rental business. One day, on his way to the gym, he started thinking, why can't renting a movie be like a gym membership? After a lot of thought, hard work, and motivation, Reed Hastings started the largest DVD by mail service offering flat rate movie rentals. He is a co-founder and CEO of Netflix. From the Marine Corps to the Peace Corps to Stanford to Pure Software Company and now to Netflix, Reed Hastings has shown to be a great leader. He portrays an extroverted, open, agreeable, and conscientious personality. His values have kept him in the right path and have led him to run a strong company. Now to Mark Musoff and Daniel Cowell, the author of Leadership for Dummies, who will discuss the leadership qualities of Reed Hastings.
First of all, what's the difference between a manager and a leader, and where would Reed Hastings fall?
Great question, Mark. Well, a manager is the short-term, day-to-day, maintaining stability in the status quo, while a leader is more visionary and looks into the long term. So Reed Hastings is a leader because he's struggled with the day-to-day maintaining stability part, but he's a visionary and he knows the long-term direction that Netflix is going to go.
Now in your book, Leadership for Dummies, you use the terms autocratic and democratic to describe leadership styles. Can you give some examples that explain these two?
All right, well, autocratic means that Hastings has most of the power and decision-making authority. So an example of this is Hastings is the chairman of the board of directors and the CEO. So if people want to challenge his decision-making, they butt heads with not only the CEO but the chairman. He did not appoint a lead director. Democratic is more people making the decisions. So, for example, he is not on any other corporate committees. He's just on the board of directors and the CEO. So he's not on the audit committee, compensation committee, or the governance committee. So he has let his other board of directors make some of the decision-making power.
So he has characteristics of both. That's interesting. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I've heard Netflix employees get paid pretty well. Does that say anything about Reed Hastings?
Yeah, they do get paid really well, and it means he's a transactional leader. So he uses rewards and punishments to help his clear, defined message. So for example, Netflix employees are asked to do a lot. One employee is asked to do the work of 3, maybe 4 other employees. So yes, they do get paid very well. And they also have the ability to pick their own compensation package. So they can choose however many stock options or just pure salary. Netflix employees are also burned out. Reed expects them to work 110% all the time, which is why he gives them unlimited vacation days, so they can recharge their battery whenever they need to. Also, he recruits the best performers, and if you are not up to their standards, then you'll be getting a compensation package. So Reed is a transactional leader.
A leadership grid, which compares concern for people on one axis and concern for production on the other axis. Where do you think Reed Hastings falls on this grid?
Yeah, well, he would be about a 7-7. He's just a little bit under a 9-9 team manager. So he does have a high concern for people. Reed was in the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Africa teaching math. So he does care about people. And obviously, being a successful CEO, he does have a high concern for production too. His first company, Pure Software, he sold for $750 million. And Netflix has been equally successful. And who knows what the future will bring for Netflix with their streaming business. So he would be a 7-7.
Okay, so you've described all these leadership styles and how Reed Hastings fits into them. But the bottom line is he an effective leader?
I think he's an effective leader. When you look at the effectiveness of a leader, you have to look at the success of the companies that they're heading. And Reed had a very successful first company, Pure Software, which he sold for $750 million, which I've already said. And Netflix although it's going through a bit of a rough time now, has largely been successful. They have a lot of loyal customers, and they lost a lot of customers, but Reed Hastings has the vision and the leadership ability to help Netflix improve, gain customers as they go towards their streaming sector. So I think the company will make a rebound because of Reed.
Okay, good point. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for
Daniel.
having
It's been a pleasure.
Next, I sat down with Dr. Andres Colon, professor of culture at Stanford University. He was able to provide some helpful insight into the organizational culture at Netflix.
Now, you and I don't work at Netflix, so how are we supposed to be able to tell anything about the organization's culture?
True. We gotta understand that there are different levels of organizational culture. And for example, an artifact, which is something that is visible to all of us, even if we're outsiders.
And can you give an example of an artifact for Netflix?
Definitely. Does this look familiar?
Of course. So you're saying that envelope is an artifact?
Well, this envelope is an artifact in the sense that since Netflix is the original DVD by mail service provider, they created innovation. They're iconic, and basically when somebody looks at this, it's instantly recognizable of Netflix.
Okay, the envelope was an easy one, but what else have you got?
Well, obviously the envelope is just one example, but a CEO story, on the other hand, is a valid indicator which represents a different aspect of the organizational culture.
Well, sure, I've heard stories about Reed Hastings. His inspiration for starting Netflix is pretty well documented.
Yeah, actually, it's very documented in 60 Minutes, where he states that when he lost a VHS tape and he got fined $40, he was surprised that he was even too embarrassed to tell his wife about the whole situation, even saying that his marriage was at stake. But then he realized that why not create a movie business surrounded with the idea of a gym membership, which is finally just a flat rate subscription.
And the rest is history, I guess.
Exactly.
But since you're the expert, what does that story tell you about the organization's culture?
Well, Netflix can be understood as a very adaptive culture.
And what does that mean exactly?
Well, adaptive culture is when the main theory about culture and performance, and it's where their employees are asked to be confident and take risks. It's important to understand that many leaders who create change in a company, such as Netflix, which is very innovative, these companies who have this adaptive culture tend to have a longer performance over time.
So you're saying in the future Netflix should be a high-performing company?
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
Finally, I interviewed Jim Carney, the most ethical man in the world. Obviously, he was the best person to talk about anything related to ethics.
Robert Greenleaf first coined the term servant leadership. Is it possible to be both a servant and a leader?
Definitely. According to Greenleaf, a great leader is first experienced as a servant to others.
And does Reed Hastings have experience as a servant to others?
He's an educational philanthropist who has both served in the Marine Corps and the Peace Corps.
Now, as you know, Larry Spears is a leading scholar in the area of servant leadership.
Of course, I've used his writings in many of my ethics class. He has outlined 10 characteristics of servant leaders based on Robert Greenleaf's theory.
Right. One of these characteristics is conceptualization. Can you explain it then?
Is a leader's ability to dream great dreams.
I'd imagine that applies to Reed Hastings pretty well. How so?
He's very conscious of time, technology, and the way society works. He believes that he can guide his company in the right direction as long as he continues to make intelligent decisions that include...
Reed Hastings is also concerned with building community. Can you explain a little bit about that?
He works to have a strong culture within his organization, emphasizing freedom and responsibility.
Commitment to growth. Does this also apply to
Definitely. Netflix pays their employees well, and they celebrate employees who leave Netflix for bigger jobs, which is rare among modern companies.
Thank you for tuning in on Talking Heads. I hope you learned a lot about the leadership, ethics, and culture of Reed Hastings.
This is Mark Musoff for Kauthar Rakane. Boom goes the dynamite.